Hello ladies and gentlemen, Dave Dobbs here. It's Wednesday the 6th of July 2022 and we are right in the thick of it, aren't we? The biggest storms happening all around the globe you've ever seen. This planet has probably seen, well, we haven't seen now for more than 1,000 years. Last year was the worst storms, certainly in China, for more than, well, for 1,000 years. The year before was the worst storm since 1930, the discovery of Pluto. The year before, the worst storm since 1998, and the year before was just incredible storms. That was kind of like 2018 kicking in, Kilauea beginning on May the 4th, 2018, a long duration volcano of the likes we've not seen on this planet for a very, very long time. And now all of this massive volcanic activity is reaching its crescendo every year, exponential to the previous year in terms of storms and chaos. And our big story, that we need to build nuclear power stations on fault lines and tsunami hotspots like the one in Fukushima that went bang on the 11th of March 2011, built right on one of the biggest tsunami hotspots in Japan, just like the one at Hinkley Point right next to us here in Glastonbury, built on the biggest tsunami hotspot in Western Europe, in the name of stopping the carbon dioxide that is being spewed out of these massive volcanoes now as we get really close. And so what I wanted to do in this video was to look again, because I've just come back from Glastonbury. I've had a really fantastic time at Glastonbury. I mean, a bit of an old git really to be going to Glastonbury in some ways, but Glastonbury supports the elders. It really does, and I always admired the elders, and now I'm becoming an elder in that community, and taking my place in that manner. As I get older, we can't change our age or anything else like that. We've just got to be whoever we are and do whatever we have to do. But we step into our sort of like grandfather rights now, and so as I get older, our history and the history that I've experienced, certainly in Glastonbury, and the whole the whole journey that I've experienced as a result of kind of what was, not that I was at the Battle of the Beanfields, Margaret Thatcher smashed up all the vehicles and caused this exodus from Stonehenge to what became Glastonbury Festival. Come on, sweetheart. Come on, lie down. Come on, lie down. Good girl. Lie down. Lie down. Doggie's not been very well today, so she's been a bit. I don't know what's happened to her lip, but she had a real swollen lip. So we've been watching her, and she's been a bit she's been a bit poorly, looking not so well at the moment. But I think she's getting through. She's better than she was yesterday. Anyway, come on, lie down. Oh, sweet. Oh, you poor little thing. Come on, lie down. Come on. Come on, lie down. Yeah, so she's not been very well, and I've had the flu. I got the flu at Glastonbury. I got it really badly, and I feel great now. Actually, I went through a real process with it, and it was a good old-fashioned flu. I mean, I know there's talk of all sorts of other things it might have been, but for me, it was a very, very, very traditional, very normal flu experience, and so I had to go through the whole process of, I didn't have any choice but to really slow down, because it really did. Debilitating in your back. It causes a lot of inflammation in your spine, and you've just got to lie still and just let your body go through the natural process, and then you end up coming up with all this green mucus. It's a bit horrible, but it's a very, very cleansing process, very normal type of proper flu. So that's been going on, but I had a real download at the festival this year. And I got to realise, and thank you for all the people who came and visited me in the Gorilla Bar and managed to get in. It was well oversubscribed. To be honest, we had queues left, right, and centre trying to get in, and it's such a small bar that we just couldn't facilitate everyone. And there was a lot of people that were quite disappointed that they couldn't get through and what have you. But that's the story also of Glastonbury, for all those that can't get into Glastonbury full stop and that would love to go along, but it's so expensive to get in and blah blah blah. So it's the macrocosm all over, and so many of these bars have become kind of almost victims of their own success. certainly Macio's in Block 9, the most incredible gay bar. You couldn't move in there, and to try and facilitate more people, so more people could get in this year, there was a certain loss of the vibe that they spend so much time working and developing, mostly by the kind of what seems quite a cliquey way of making sure that everyone's getting in has to have some kind of one of these kind of it's like a wristband or something like that, or a card or something that's passed out between friends. And so this spread of, so no one's walking into the place without knowing anything and just seeing there and being a voyeur to the whole thing, that they're being invited in there by friends, and to keep a connected community of people coming through that space, holding the space. Because if you're turning into a space looking for a party, you're not turning up to a place having a party. You're looking for someone else to be having a party. And what you want in a party environment is for anyone to turn up to be having a party, not looking for a party. Massive difference. It's chalk and cheese. And this is kind of the story of what's really happening in this world. You know what I mean? It's anyway. I had a real revelation in there. I had a real revelation of what I'm doing in this process. And you remember when this crop circle turned up, and I'd built. I just finished building my latest model, my latest astronomical model. And this was in 2020, and as soon as I'd finished it, this image turned up on the side of this skull, and this skull was found in Mexico. It's not a real skull; it's a stone. It's a carved stone. It's a carving in marble. It looks like marble, some sort of very dense stone there. And of a grey alien, a mature grey alien who's cradling a baby Inca god. And then there's another statue of a mature Inca god cradling a grey alien. But the mature grey alien, and you can see the pictures in Well, the Fabled Planet X was Pluto Long. I've got quite a lot of the images. You'll see quite a lot of the images stacked up inside here if you want to just piece back, and then there's more links to other places where you can find that as well. But just staying with the imagery for a quick shape, because it's so startling that most will struggle to believe any of it regardless. But when I'd show my girlfriend, Rach, I said, look at this symbol. I think that this symbol is the same representation of my model that I've just finished, I've just completed. And she said, oh my God, that's just like the crop circle I went in 2009. And I said, I'd love to see it. And we dug it up, and to our absolute amazement, it wasn't just slightly the same, it was exactly the same. And this is a model of our solar system as it really is. I kind of show it in motion there. Can you, if I just pause it there, there's the sun, there's, if you like, Pluto, and there's the big object in the center that our sun and Pluto both orbit, whether you want to call it Pluto, whether you want to call it, Uranus, whether you want to call it Neptune, whatever you want to call it. Remember, and I often go through this, and it's so important to try and get your head around this a little bit, even though I keep repeating it. I feel like more people are kind of starting to grasp some of the aspects of what I'm talking about, because when you realise that between the first discovery of the first dwarf planet, Seti B or Mira, in around about 1596, I think it was, and then that's the same time as Galileo discovered supposedly Jupiter and its moons, and then Saturn and its moons, and kind of like and if we go 84, it's 84 years between 1681, Isaac Newton's big discovery, which he later would identify as Halley's Comet, which was the kind of point where he kind of reworked Kepler's rules of orbital mechanics. That was the same time as Galileo, and he'd remodeled kind of like Copernicus's kind of sun in the center, and all the planets moving round the sun. And of course Copernicus released his work before Galileo, but he released it on his deathbed just so he wouldn't be killed by the Catholics. And of course, as soon as Isaac Newton came along and he said he could see Jupiter right there with a 30 times telescope, like a really bad iPhone, not like a really bad telescope. You could see all its moons and everything. Of course, it was right there, just like we were seeing it, massive and blue, right there in 2018. And we can see that between Neptune, 1846, and the discovery of Pluto in 1930, the worst storms since 1930, remember, when Pluto was discovered, that is also 84 years. And if we think, well, what is the orbit of Uranus? And we realise it's 84 years. And if Uranus's orbit is 1 times 84, we can understand that Neptune's orbit is likely going to be, in this Newtonian grand deception, 2 times 84. And if you said, 2 times 84, 182 is 16. If you said 168, you'd be 3 years out. You'd be pretty close to, what they officially say, 165. But it's basically 2 times 84. And of course, what's Pluto's orbit going to be? It's going to be 3 times 84. 182 is 16. 3 is 24. 240. Yeah, it's about 252 years. It's 3 times 84. It's that kind of like, So when Jupiter comes along, we're saying, oh look, stripy blue planet, but it's gone blue. Why? We don't know. That's Galileo's time. When we finally kind of identify after Isaac Newton, 84 years later, and we've got Uranus, we're saying, oh, it's kind of a big blue planet, stripy, looks a little bit like Jupiter, but it's Uranus. And then we discover Neptune, and we're like, oh, look, it's a big blue planet, stripy, looks a little bit like Uranus. And then, oh, guess what we discovered in 1930, big blue planet. And so we've got this kind of new way of seeing this big blue planet, because what they've done, as I constantly try to express, is that they've given, if I come over to Universe Sandbox here, I've got it up and running. So we've got a live view, planets, moons, and spacecraft. This is the Universe Sandbox package, and we can where have we got Pluto there? You can see if I bring right into Pluto there, we've got all its official kind of, like, you can see I use many of these names to name the systems that go around Pluto at the moment. Hydra, Charon, Kerberos, Nix. Is it Nix or Styx or? But yeah, you get the picture. You can really go into this. But what I wanted to kind of express to you was that each one of these major players that we've been given every 84 years is also given a different perihelion point. And because it's given a different perihelion point, it means that the sun, whatever the perihelion point, whatever the closest point an object goes to the sun, closest helium to the sun, or helion to the sun, it means that the perihelion point is the frontal edge of the object. Is at Earth's perihelion point is when it's closest to the sun, which means it's coming around the front edge of the sun at that point. So if every object is having a different, let's just tilt that up, and let's just tilt that up, and let's just keep the sun as our center. Oh no, we've missed that again. Got that? Yeah, that keeps us in the center there. You'll notice that, like there, for example, this object, what is that object there? because I'm running so many things here, it makes it a little bit trickier for the computer, but I'm not too sure what object that is supposed to be. Parker Solar Probe, I think it says. I struggle to see that text, it's so small. Unfortunately, you can't make the text any bigger on those, but can you? So that would be the front edge. This object would be moving across this way, and this would be the front edge, so the sun would be moving in this direction according to that. Now what's happened is that you'll see that many of these objects are being given different perihelion points. This one's coming around here, this one here is implying that the sun's moving that direction. Or these ones would be implying that the sun's moving in that direction. This one here would imply that the sun's kind of moving in this direction. This one coming around here would imply that the sun's moving in this direction. And to demonstrate that, if I now come back to the sun, and we open that out. Now I haven't made this model. It's a very complicated model to build because it's been so much effort, but the only way they can build this model is by having, let's go to motion, speed 0 miles per second. So let's go to kilometers an hour, and let's set that now to, Earth is, I'm not too sure exactly, it's, it's about 67,000 miles an hour. So that must be close to about, more than, I'm assuming, 100,000 kilometers an hour. And for our planets to orbit round it, our planets need to be travelling considerably faster, almost double the speed of the sun, to be able to go round it and then to loop back round. So I've got to set this to about 50,000 miles and kilometers an hour to kind of like, have I got that correct? 50,000 miles an hour, yeah. So now we've given that some motion, and we're just going to also, we're going to look at the direction. We're going to consider that the direction it travels. Now this is very interesting because what direction have they got? So let's just, we're going to also set this to the real direction. I'm of a mind that the solar system is actually moving, our sun is actually moving, which is towards the 21st of December. That is the frontal direction. So what we'll do is, before we set this off, we'll set this to months per second, and we'll set that to moving at 1 month. Oh look, we've got 11. One month per second, and I just wanted to, and we're just, first of all, we're going to move to, we're just going to move this forward, so the date goes to at least the look, it's going only moving like almost a day a second. So this one, this is a bit of a problem child, this model, to make it move at the timers don't work quite as well, so we just have to kind of calculate it. So we're basically there just coming into August, so we'll pause it there and we'll say August, what are we there, 17th of August, about halfway through August, August, September, October, November, December. So that's 4 months. So where are we now? Earth. Yeah, it's not far off our kind of like expected frontal direction that I would consider to be the forward direction. Whoever's put this in motion, even if they haven't put it in motion, clearly, no solar system model on this system has a sun that moves, because it will not stay together. It will fall apart. And I just want to give you an idea of that perihelion point, of what happens when you give an object, when we give the sun motion. We can see how the sun is, as these objects are going to come round to orbit the sun is moving. And so they end up coming around the front edge of it, because they can't have a concentric cycle around the sun, because the sun keeps moving away from that centre. And so we end up with these kind of constant perihelion points of these objects on the frontal direction the sun is moving. Can you see how all coming around the front there? And this is the notion that we can only have one fundamental front edge for the sun. And, in this program, you can set you can set not only the inclinations, but you can also set the angle of perihelium and aperihelium. So we can offset that angle and move it around. But obviously, I could run an animation of a car moving along with towing a caravan, and the caravan being at a 45-degree behind the car. So it's dragging it like that. But we all know that as the car starts moving, the caravan's going to straighten out. Even though we might be able to set an animation and drag it along sideways and say we can change that angle to suit as we, in the real kind of logic of trailing objects. You don't see a comet. The idea of seeing a comet moving through the sky with its tail coming off to the perpendicular doesn't sit right in our mind, because we have a mind that the tail is dragging behind the object, and that defines a big part of periheliums and aperiheliums also. It's that when we're seeing a comet, we're seeing all of the debris and the comet travelling at almost the same speed, and it's just dragging along. Now, if any aspect of that was travelling faster than the comet, and it was trapped in its gravity, then it wouldn't be able to escape its gravity, but it would begin a circular motion around it, because its increased speed to the primary which it orbits creates an orbital relationship. And so what we're looking at here is Kepler's fundamental rules of orbital mechanics, of why things move in this fashion. Now this was at the same time as this was at the 1500s, and what's happened is Isaac Newton has thrown over this story, which has been refabricated by all of these different creators of this big blue object thereafter, that have tried to confuse the Kepler story around Galileo's time. And remember, Galileo was put under house arrest. Look at that, all these objects now are isn't that? All of these objects are now coming in. There comes Jupiter, flying in finally we're going to have a big, oh my goodness me, look at that, we've had a bit of a collision. And now all these objects are shooting off as Jupiter has brought all its objects round so close to the sun. We've had this massive kind of like dumping and shedding of these objects. And of course, this isn't Newtonian science. This is a window on Newtonian science, and that's why none of these models can show the sun with motion, because it turns into a total mess, because we are not seeing the true nature of movement within our solar system. And the question you've got to ask yourself is why? If we now, I'm going to stop this program here and free up a little bit of bandwidth, if I can remember how to do that. maybe go through that way. Quit Universe Sandbox. Do you want to quit? Exit. Sorry about this. That should hopefully free it up a little bit of bandwidth, and then I'm going to come back to the so we can see there, you know, how if I come now over to, say, this model here, which goes right up to where we are coming up to now, which is I've got another model with all of the planets. That's just Hydra, the big one. I mean, this is Hydra that we're going to see in just Hydra on its own, which you could also call Jupiter. That we're expecting this big flyby on August 2022, next month. But unfortunately, if we bring this model back to also Kerberos and Charon, well, the twins, as I call them, the twins, to 2022, they are also, one of these twins is going to get very close to us in mid to late, and these are the twin tail objects, and one of these objects is going to get very, very close to us mid to late July, and that's our big concern for that's what's causing all the volcanoes, all the earthquakes right now. And you know, we've explored so many of these objects over the years, probably going back to 2000, I mean, that was a massive shot that Steve Olsen obviously put up back in 2018. But obviously the one that really put me on the map obviously was the one when I turned up into America for when was it? It was, I mean, it wasn't a massive flyby. It was still very big, seen on both sides of the Atlantic. But it really, you know, I'd flown to, well, basically going in the actual, probably the better order is the big flyby that I'd predicted on the 20th of January 2017, and I didn't know about Carlos Rada's massive prediction on the 20th of January 1939, when he said Planet X would pass, and he said there would be a massive earthquake in Chile. And sure enough, a massive earthquake occurs in Chile right when he says, on the 20th of January 1939, 9 years after the kind of arrival of this big blue planet coming in, and then we get its main moon flying by as the object passes us. And basically all of these objects are suddenly on the same ecliptic plane. We get this massive object. So we could add to the 20th of January 1939, we could add 84 years. And obviously we're going to come to the 20th of January 2023. But what the complicated thing to understand here is that we are now seeing a different type of flyby to what happened in 1939. What's happened is that this object that had come in, if you like, or more like coming in this way, is that correct? Just trying to work that out. Yeah, sorry, it's coming in this way and coming out the other side, has actually come right round our sun and is coming out over here. So we end up with fundamentally our sun moving forward effectively in this direction, and objects coming off Pluto are either coming in and coming round and not quite getting to our sun and then returning back to Pluto, or if they're being pulled right round our sun and they come right round our sun, they pass in that February-March position, which is when Fukushima occurs, and they exit in the July-August position. And that's these are the fundamental exit and entry corridors that we're really talking about here. And the difference is, in 1939, it caused the 20th of January. Remember the big storm that happened in the tsunami and massive storm that happened because of the earthquake in the Azores? Well, you won't remember it, but it was the tsunami that happened on the 20th of January, 1606, and then at the same time as the Azores was going bang, as in the volcanoes that sit at the end of the fault line that divides the African plate from the Asian plate, from the Eurasian plate. Apologies there. And it meets at the mid-Atlantic rift that's going from obviously south to north or north to south, is coming down through Iceland, ironically, which is where the big volcano that happened in 2020. And then, of course, La Palma, sitting on that same fault line in 2021. And we're seeing all these long-duration volcanoes, Etna and Stromboli, are going crazy at the moment. The pollution that's coming up, the storms that are going off, the volcanoes that are going off right now, it's absolutely massive. And I'm just going to see if I can work out what's happening with steam. We're just going to quit steam. And so when I'd made this prediction on the 20th of January, I had no idea. And of course, if you add the big fabled 84 years to January the 20th, 1939, you will come to 20th of January 2023. But of course, that, in my opinion, is not when the next big flyby, because we did that. We've done that in 16. We did that in 1606. We did that again in 1939. We've had that date reoccur. We are getting all these sightings of these objects coming around the sun now. This system's got so close that they're no longer just coming around here, they're coming right round, and it's changed the orbital relationship of these objects. And we can charter that because of what happened in 2008, what we call the big financial crash in 2008. Lehman Brothers collapse. Oh my God, all the peasants borrowed too much money. It was all their fault. Nothing to do with the bankers. When in reality, so many buildings fell over on even May or June the 12th, 2008 in China, when the massive earthquake occurred, and it did so much property damage. And for some reason, the big boys up top knew that something bad was going to happen in the property industry, and they pulled their money out. And then in China, there is mayhem. Many people die, massive buildings fall over, massive property destruction that could have been so much bigger because of the flyby of this big object coming round this side of the solar system. And then we see the same thing again, and it was in 2016. We see the same flyby coming in, and we see the same type of activity, but just much lighter. It was getting heavier, because you think about what happened in 2010 and 2011. Admittedly, different objects, but they were twin-tail objects. These objects, but one of these twin-tail objects, not the big blue object, but nonetheless the same fashion. On the 26th of February 2010, you get the big Icelandic earthquake going bang, massive, stops all air travel, like all the air travel is being stopped across Europe at the moment. You know, and we're seeing Etna and Stromboli going absolutely crazy, volcanoes, crazy storms, tornadoes, it's all going on. There's no way there's going to be air travel until that's clearing, and they think it's going to clear. It's just getting worse and worse and worse by the day. Every day is now exponential to the previous day, because we are getting super close to this system that we absolutely want to ignore is going and affecting this Earth massively. And then, so on the 26th of February 2010, massive Icelandic volcano. 27th of February 2010, we get the massive 8.8 in Chile. So we get north to south. This object is passing this position, but it's going from north to south. And now what we're seeing is, with all these long duration volcanoes, we're simply seeing these objects coming around and all on the same ecliptic plane. So one flyby, you go from 2010, February the 27th, 2010, you go 1 year and 13 days, and you get Fukushima. That's a 13-day difference in astronomical positions of the Earth, and we see the biggest seismic event outside of the 2004 tsunami that we've seen on this planet for the for a very long time. I mean, it's whether you want to take it back to the kind of like the earthquakes were happening in 1906. The kind of like, these are stand-alone events that are massive, pivotal events. And when you look at what happened in Fukushima, and you're seeing nuclear power stations going bang because of volcanoes and earthquakes, and you're seeing that the nuclear power station was built in the name of stopping the carbon dioxide that is spewing out of these massive volcanoes that spew out thousands, millions and millions. Etna's supposed to be like 80 million tons of carbon dioxide. It dwarfs what the European bloc spews out, supposedly. These stories that we run in this greenwashing nonsense to kind of like, just so we can get our hands to, just so we can generate all this depleted uranium, so we can be on the fighting frontier with our tanks and nuclear bombs and our nuclear depleted uranium bombshells that can melt tanks from above without even hitting the tank, because they're like little mini nukes, just spewing radiation. This toxic story. It's all this grab for energy. And of course all this, when this big flyby came in on the 20th of January 2017, and it was just spectacular, and it came with, like I say, an 8.0 earthquake, and it was just spectacular. It just filled up the Mexican skyline. I mean, it was just absolutely amazing. And of course it put me massively on the map. And of course then I'd come out, Steve Olsen had organised the big conference, and I'd come out to America for this big conference that he'd organised, and he'd organised the conference for my next predicted flyby. And sure enough, as I'm coming in, the flyby is literally flying by. I am flying in a plane into America when the flyby is going on. And ESO releases a massive European Southern Observatory, and the LIGO detector that detects also gravitational anomalies. They'd all suddenly come forward and said there'd been a gravitational anomaly on exactly when this thing had flown by. And just like the massive 8.0 earthquake that occurred on the 20th of January 2017, when it also flew by. And so we're seeing these massive patterns, and these patterns, these sightings, these many, every 200 days, another massive flyby, and this endless attempt to try and calculate the movements and understand. That was Matt Rogers' shot on the 15th of August 2016, just utterly epic. I haven't heard much from Matt, and big love to you out there, brother. Keep on keeping on, whatever you're doing. I know it's really tough, and we're just seeing it all going on. We just don't know what to do. But so much love to you out there, brother. I really hope amazing sky watcher. You've produced some of the, you've caught some of the best shots I've ever seen in this whole thing. And so, blessings to you out there. Blessings to all the sky watchers out there, and all the people that have tried to help me push forward in this. And JDoc74, I still haven't sent you these books. I'm so sorry. A million apologies. One of my subscribers sent me quite a bit of cash in support of everything that I'm doing, and I've just been really slack, I'm afraid, in sending him a copy of the book and what have you. I've just been so distracted with just trying to sort so much other stuff out and just get to that point where we could even try and put this big thing onto Glastonbury or do all the things I do and everything else like that. And it just feels like, you know, when I wrote Laughing Gas, it was, this understanding that, I published it in 2010, 2011, and then finally as a completed book I serialised it up until that point, and then 2012 on the summer solstice I published it as a whole book, and it was just this whole vision about Britain being used as a Trojan horse to feed Europe into a war against Russia, and the only way that the Europeans would be able to fend off this attack against Russia was with technology that would be fed to them via free trade deals and their relationship with NATO, and force them either to go be in opposition to NATO and go under the wheels of NATO or join NATO. There'd be, as George Bush said, you're either with us or against us, and it's this whole relationship that's going on, this whole fighting front just to save the US dollar from all its fiat-based currency that's just gone absolutely crazy, that needs to be replaced with something that has real value. Because when you take the value off the table and create these fiat-based currencies, you have to have something that forces and imposes that value. If there's no real value on the table, and of course there arises the gun under the table and perpetual war that we've been living in ever since the first black president got elected, Dick Gregory, in 1968, and then all his votes were taken from him and given to Richard Nixon, with the New York Times telling us that some computer systems can't be trusted, like the one that found a black comedian to be the winner of the 1968 election. And of course he was the one, not Dick Gregory, Richard Nixon was the one that then removed the gold standard and set about a state of perpetual war, that America would be forced into a state of perpetual war by enforcing value in a currency that had no value. There was no value on the table. It was no longer a bank. It was a racket. It was a fiat-based currency system with no value other than war and might and depleted uranium and nuclear bombs and aggression. It was rule of terror. The rule of peace moved into the rule of terror and control through war and divide and conquer. And so here we are at this mighty time where we see these massive things occurring now, these massive storms, these massive flybys, these massive gravitational effects by these objects that we are so close to now. And we are, this model needs massively updating, and I've talked a lot about how we can really kind of some of the big changes that I want to bring to this model, so I can bring more of a 3D kind of interactive perspective look at this, and look at all of these flybys, so you can kind of you can just kind of get the gist of what 1800 years would look like of our Sun and Pluto finally catching up to each other, and what they would look like overlapped from 1930 to our present time now, and what that would look like with all these different objects if they were then to be added over the top as they've come around, and to see all of these flybys synced up in the order that they've presented themselves over since we've charted this since 2004, and building this massive model from all the unbelievable sightings that we've seen, and to see 1800 years of movement, and now we just kind of finally seeing that what it's really showing us is the power system that we can hook up to. That is a symbol of power for you to hold in your mind's eye when you do your manifestations and when you do your meditations and when you're drawing in help from a higher place, how you can hook yourself up to the real power of the system that you're in. We're all in a massive energy deception on every level, and the Newtonian deception is to take motion away from your system so you cannot comprehend the movement of your sun, or here this would be our sun and this would be Pluto. Our sun moving in a forward direction around, all of these objects are moving in, our sun, Pluto, and this object, these three objects are all moving forward in the same direction. They will have the same angle of intention. A slight change with our sun, because that's the one that's on the slight. That's why our axis is our seasons are created because of the angle of our axis as it goes around the sun, and that angle is because our sun is on a tilted ecliptic to the main ecliptic plane of the Planet X system, or the system our sun really orbits. It is the one that's on an inclination, a slight inclination. We are the ones coming through the central plane of the system we really orbit. But all of these three primary players are all charging forward in the same direction, but they are trapped in an orbital relationship with each other. And so that brings about this big 1800 year cycle that we see. And every 1800 years, our sun and Pluto sync up. And that process of them getting closer and closer started in the 1600s, and therefore will complete in about, it will be moving further, it will be kind of like that same process. We've got another 400 years of being quite close to this system overall, but not as close as now. Now is the closest, and now is when all of these objects are sharing the same ecliptic plane. This is the big junction point. This is the point where there's big shifts on many different soul levels, and many souls can now jump forward and rise up to the big blue planet. They can move forward to their next level of evolution and enter a higher frame of consciousness and have that as their soul address, rather than the astral realms of earth being many souls' address. That astral soul address can move up a level for many if they do not get dragged into this war. And many that do get dragged into this war, their souls will depart. They do not want to enter into that karmic equation anymore. They've done that. And so they will pass over their bodies to their lower ego vibrations if their bodies choose war. Each human is choosing which soul it wishes to incarnate within it. This right now is all about human choice. The living, breathing being that you truly are on a physical, biological level is being given this choice to decide which soul it chooses to tally with. It's a very big thing that's happening here. It's a very, very, very big thing. And we are all making massive choices. But all I can tell you is, when you can understand that the 21st of December is your forward motion of your sun moving forward, and that it is in an orbital relationship with this object, the big central sun, and whether you want to call it Uranus, whether you want to call it Neptune, whether you want to call it Pluto, whether you want to call it Eris, this object and this are our sun and the big blue object, all in this big relationship, and we are all connected. And when you connect to the forward motion of your sun moving through time and space, remember E equals mc squared, energy equals mass times c squared. C is the constant velocity of light, it is movement. Energy equals mass moving. And we have taken with this Newtonian deception the movement out of your energy. Hook up. And this symbol, this understanding is trying to help us hook up to our galactic energetic centers. To visualize this movement and to bring this energy into your visualizations of how you perceive the universe when you are conducting your prayer and your meditations and you are trying to manifest in this realm. What about putting in the batteries, pone pilas, as they say as the curanderos say in the ceremonies in South America? Pone las pilas, put in the batteries, energize your reality. Bring energy into your reality. Invite the great celestial power that is just reaching out to you. And that is the message that is coming through all of this. That massive flyby, the one that really put Jeff P on the map. I think it wasn't that one, it was that one there on the 14th of October 2016. It was just a massive shot caught on a webcam at 10 o'clock at night. And it fitted in with when I started really understanding the full implications of this and fitting that in with all the big flyby that happened on there. Another one of the big earthquakes that I predicted, and I said it would happen on the 24th of November 2016. And it happened on the 22nd of November 2016. And the whole plate in New Zealand lifted up more than a metre. But it didn't cause a tsunami. It's because the plate itself was floating. The granite plate rose. Rather than the kind of basalt seafloor dropping, the granite was more buoyant when it started shaking. So the ground came up rather than the seafloor went down, which would have caused a massive tsunami. But nonetheless, it happened exactly, and then you saw the massive object plasma charging, a massive stripy planet that plasma charges into the side of Mars. Crystal clear, massive, filled up webcam. What do you do with that other than just throw utter blind belief and utter denial of this whole story and cling to this Newtonian deception, this grand deception which de-energizes us and forces us into energy conflict. And all of what's happening right now is a massive energy conflict because we are not connecting up to our galactic energetic potential. We're separated from this story. We have been deceived to our energy potential. We're all in conflict, fighting in these little games, just like the Celestine prophecy, how we all end up in these cycles of stealing energetically from each other because we're not hooking up. And any idea that's not hooked up to energy is doubt, and doubted. You cannot act on it because there's no energy to make it happen. And an idea, you can't have nothing, you can't have an idea, you can't have doubt without an idea that's being doubted. You can't have doubt on its own without a specific idea or a specific want or need or whatever that has to be then destroyed by a negative thought process or an unenergized thought process. And any thought process that is not energized is a thought process that is in doubt. We are in doubt. We are in doubt. And that has to change. We have to hook up. We have to energize. And we have to connect with the galactic power that is at our fingertips. It is, our hearts are bathing in this magnificent energy resource that is just sitting there. But we doubt it. Even though we get shots like this of the most epic proportions, we are of doubt. Oh, Putin's evil. Ooh. All these horrible stories that just keep us in these permanent states of war. How is it that I could write in a story, publish it in 2010, 2011, telling you everything that's going on, if it wasn't for the massive help of all of those that work with me and that have helped facilitate this massive story and this awakening to the real system and the real the type of flybys that we see now. There's just been so many. Remember that shot there that came in? You know, that was the big shot, and I often talk about it. But that obviously was that was a massive shot as well. Brandon Corey Nagley on the in December 2000 and I think it was 2020 actually. But that shot there was a very interesting shot, and I'm just going to probably close on that shot because that was Alex Luhin that put that up on the 1st of September 2019, and it was, you know, because that shot that came in I showed you on 2017 August 2017. I'd finally turned up into America for the big festival in Bend. For the eclipse that was also happening almost at the same time as the flyby, and then the big flyby came in 2018, as in on the 17th of June 2018, and my model didn't define it. My model didn't show anything happening August. You know, July, August. I had no exit corridor. I didn't know of the most significant of all exit corridors at that stage. And we were just seeing the primary exit corridor, as in 20th of January, and then coming out in September, coming out the other side in kind of like in September, October, or vice versa, coming in September and then going out in January. And suddenly that whole flyby just suddenly jumped up a level, and we started getting these, we'd become apparent that there was this other bigger corridor, and that the Fukushima kind of March the 11th corridor of objects coming right round the sun and then coming out in the July-August position. I just didn't understand the basic. And of course, my original models were identifying these corridors, which were all leading me to finally understand the forward motion of our sun. And my name was dirt in 2018 because I just couldn't understand it. And it was just like, where's Dave Dobbs' model now? He just doesn't show any of this. And I desperately tried to build models. I desperately tried to show different ways. And then Alex Luhan brings that up on the 1st of September 2019, which is nearly 2 years of not having a model that I can really understand what's going on. I can predict, like I could predict the massive tsunami that was going to happen on the 28th of September 2018 in Indonesia. Remember the massive one where you see the guy bareback riding the roof of his house into an oncoming tsunami, being overtaken by his neighbouring hills in a liquefaction earthquake? Literally everything's gone crazy, and he's riding the roof of his house holding his camera. Like, you cannot make this up on any level. And yet there he is. And I was still able to make those type of predictions because I was accurately predicting all the flybys, like I say, between January and September, as in the front edge of objects that don't go right round the sun, as I showed you earlier. So up until the 1st of September 2019, when this shot came in and I saw that circular movement, we'd watch this object coming in, I'd say look out for it, just as we've seen, like I say, the 28th of September, the big flyby coming in, and then we get the earthquake and the tsunami. The same flyby comes in the next year, I can predict it. It came by on the 3rd of July. It's just like, there it is, guys. It shoots in, it comes in, and I'm like, you're going to see it going out. I'm expecting to see it coming round the sun and coming around here, and it comes in here and it goes out again. It is orbiting something over here. It was, the sun wasn't its primary. It was, we understand. It was finally a whole new realm of models could be built without the sun being the primary. And so began this whole new model, this whole new quest to understand the nature of the system we truly live within, and the grand deception that has been thrown over the top of that to de-energize you so you can become a slave, a powerless slave, worth nothing more than cannon fodder. We have got to change this story now, or this earth will be done with us. You can see what happened in 1606. You can see if we keep pushing for this war, the Azores, you can see the fault line that goes down the bottom of Britain that separates the Eurasian plate from the African plate. You can see how easy it is for the gods to remedy this problem. If we, as the Colburn Bible, the oldest account of the great fiery red-tailed dragon that circles the world about, that's described in the Colburn, that was released by Henry VIII when he destroyed the monasteries. And it says, humanity is not punished for the mistakes it makes. It's punished for the mistakes it fails to rectify. And it says that when those that experienced that last great flyby, when they came down from the hiding places, the skin hang loose from their bodies. They hadn't eaten they were starving. They had no memory of who they were, and their gods and guides were gone. They'd lost their souls. They'd forgotten who they were. And that's what happened to us. That's why we've got this incredible architecture that sits before us, and we see this as our ancestors. It is us. This is who we were. And then we let it go, cling to war, aggression, hate, division, and a powerless story. We've had amnesia for nearly 400-500 years. Humanity has been plunged into a state of amnesia with a dead, inert story that disconnects us from our cosmic center. And now we've got to connect with the galactic center again, with our energetic centers, and re-energize this matrix. It's time. It's time to raise the vibration of planet Earth against the backdrop of this terrible story which attempts to pull the Earth down. And you know, they've just fired up the Large Hadron Collider. They've just fired it up for their big collision. And this is the massive toilet flush that they will attempt to fire up because of their powers that be that are really trying to control this. Their fear of us waking up. They would rather destroy this world and recreate the Big Bang on little old Earth, the biggest bang the universe can create, and to create that bang on this little tiny planet. They would rather that than see humanity wake and lose control of us. For this is our realm. This is a human realm. And we have choices and rights of which souls incarnate within us. We don't have to follow this evil warring, energy grabbing, this energy deception, this vibration lowering old technique to keep humanity broken. We can rise to another vibration now. We can reconnect to the big gods now, if we wish. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for all your efforts. Thank you so much, if you meant, for coming down and visiting me in the Gorilla Bar. You know, it's a real part of our history there, and you know, many of you have followed many of my flybys over the years, and you've seen probably kind of like an enormous amount of the many flybys that I've shown you, that I've brought to your attention over the years as I've been chartering this incredible journey of chartering these incredible objects flying by, desperately trying to understand what causes them, what makes this big blue object appear, this historic accounts of this massive object, this there you go, there's a video about the whole Colburn Bible. I read a big section of it there. This big blue object, these big flybys, so many of them. Every 200 days at first. 6 years ago, I discovered the patterns, and I predicted so many, and that was 6 years ago, and I was just longing to understanding there was a 200-day anomaly, and that 200-day was turning into a 400-day kind of every year overall, but I would always be 4 days out, and that 400 days became this kind of 396-day kind of anomaly. And of course 396 is the numbers of Jupiter, because it's exactly 13 months. Remember that one? Massive. That's the flyby. That was in October 2013, and that same object there that's coming in to pass us is the same object that will pass us again in August 2022 this year, in my opinion. That same flyby. And in July one of these big twin tails will fly by us. We have two massive objects. And that's it, folks. Thanks so much for joining me with this video. You know, so many of you have watched this over and over again, and you know, this is just to reach out to the audience I have in this country, because I've been very attacked in this country by certain people that have made it very difficult for other people to look at my model, because it's been controlled by some very, very dark energies that have used this as a means to try and attack me and make sure that my friends, and make sure so many people can't help me and kind of like help me talk about this. And so it's been a tremendous weight for me to run this model and to build this model and to learn to use some of the systems that have enabled me to calculate the movement of these objects, and all of those have contributed their time and their effort to help me develop this and develop this understanding and this weight also of seeing this and wanting to change the outcome of this, and us not wanting to leave Europe and thinking I could potentially change that, and having to see this whole thing unfold. And you know, it's a massive thing that we are undergoing right now, and if we mess this up, the costs to us much more than a physical level. His physical bodies are utterly incidental to this story. It's our soul stories that run behind this that are the big things that we are really trying to change. The bigger story behind our existence on this physical level. And so good luck through this whole process. You know, you're in it now. We're in it. And this is happening now. This is all happening now. And all I can tell you is that don't get dragged into stories of war, wage peace, golden rings of light and protection around those you love. Try to work with all of those that are working on a negative vibration to help raise their vibration. Try not to be too antagonistic in your opinions, because everyone's just try to be loving and understanding and talk kindly to those that are desperately trying to attack you and draw you down, and try to set your friends so they attack you. And all of the kind of techniques that are now acting against those that are truth speaking now, and all the shutting down of all the truth channels. You know, you're all the soldiers of the mighty. You've all held baton of peace, if only for a moment, in your hands before you fell or might fall. But if you know that, to hold that, if just for a moment, you've known something which connects you to divinity on a level beyond all your wildest beliefs. And you can trust in that. You have touched that. We only can do our best against a massive backdrop of energy sucking and pulling down. And if you're fighting in that grand battle, then you are an angel on this platform. So much love to you, so much respect. Big golden rings of light. And thank you for all of your help to staying with me for this long. So much love. Good luck through this journey. Big golden rings of light. Thank you.